Become a sustaining member of the Commonwealth Club for just $10 a month. Join today.
Hello and welcome. I'm Cole Thomason-Reedus with the Member-Led Arts Forum at the Commonwealth Club of California and Educational Content Curator with the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Community at San Francisco Opera. The Commonwealth Club's Arts Forum holds special programming related to the arts in the Bay Area and beyond throughout the year. In normal times, we would be doing this in person at our beautiful building on the Embarcadero, but instead, we are doing it today as we have done so many times since the onset of COVID-19, online with you, our virtual audience. We are delighted to welcome our members of the Commonwealth Club, friends of San Francisco Opera, the William James Association, and everyone else who is joining us online for this special program, Beauty Within Dark Places, Beethoven's Fidelio, and an exhibit of art by incarcerated artists. We have a number of guests today, and I'd like to start by introducing my co-moderator for the hour, longtime member of the San Francisco Opera Chorus, Aaron Neff. Aaron, welcome. And let's just start by talking about Fidelio and being on stage. What has it been like to be back on stage in front of a live audience at the War Memorial Opera House?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. It's been amazing in a way that I had not anticipated. The energy coming from everyone, backstage crew, stage management, opera chorus, soloist has been so loaded. We've been waiting for this day. We weren't really sure it would come. Quite honestly, when we started rehearsing, all bets were off with the Delta variant. So it's amazing to be performing. And then the energy from the audience, I have to say, is something I've never quite felt. Even pre-applause, it's just the hunger for community and hearing, expression, and art. So an amazing gift.
Absolutely. And I so agree with you. The energy from the audience has been so wonderful. And just as you and I are so glad to be back, they are so glad to be back as well. So it's really been wonderful. And let's talk about the production for a moment. I'm going to go and share my screen so that we can have a look at some of the fabulousness that has been on this stage. And hopefully we are seeing Fidelio there. And Fidelio is, of course, set in a prison. And we have done a very updated version. We are setting it in a modern day detention center. And so our stage very much reflects that. So let's have a look at some photos here. Aaron, what are we seeing there?
So this is this is our current production. I'm not seeing the photos yet.
You're not seeing the photos. All right.
No.
Excuse me for that. Let me stop the share and try that one more time.
I can just begin talking about this. The story of Fidelio is the story of a man named Florestan who's been put in prison unjustly. He's a political prisoner, and they want to silence him. And his dutiful wife, Leonora, disguises herself as a prison guard and infiltrates the prison and eventually frees him. So that's the quick and dirty of Fidelio. It was written 150 years ago, 170.
1805 was the premiere, yeah.
Yes. And I really want to take my hat off to the San Francisco Opera, to Matthew Shilvach, for having the courage to kind of put this in the setting where it belongs in contemporary times. I think it is no small thing that to really make this statement. And while this is set in a detention center, we know there's detention centers all over the world, and there has been traditionally Japanese internment camps, Nazi Germany. But in our country, we have ICE detention centers. So in the work I do, when we'll get to that with prisoners, this had a very, very, very personal meaning to me and my community who I work with. This is a picture of Elsa Vandenhever, who portrays Leonora, disguised as a man. Someone said she looked so good as a man that it was confusing. I also like to say that one of the alternate titles to this opera at one time was The Triumph of Marital Love.
As well as Lenora, the character herself. And it was
Yes.
actually, I believe, the publishers that wouldn't let Beethoven publish it with the name of a woman. It was changed to Fidelio.
But an amazing statement about sort of a feminist role, a strong female. In my work in carceral justice, there are a lot of women. I recently read an article in the New York Times how abolitionism is the work of women. Debatable, of course, but this really resonated with me.
Yeah, so Erin, tell us more about that. As we've said, it's been a while since we've all been on stage. In fact, the last time before this fall that San Francisco Opera was performing live on the stage was in December of 2019. That's a long time to go without performing. So what has kept you busy during that long span of silence?
Prior to the pandemic, I worked with a group called California Coalition for Women Prisoners. We do advocacy for incarcerated women in California, namely at Chowchilla and in Southern California, CIW, and we are currently expanding to Dublin. We would do in-person visiting and we do advocacy for people who've reached out to us or people who've been recommended from either our members inside or we have a letter writing program. But during the pandemic, we were no longer able to do any of the in-person visiting. There was a tremendous amount of interest in becoming involved, I think because people had time and they were home, but a lot of energy coalescing around George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And we suddenly had volunteers really wanting to get involved. And so we decided to start a program called Writing Warriors that teaches people how to do advocacy, but it's all through writing using the email, snail mail, and it's been wildly successful. We don't really get that many volunteers a year who really dedicate themselves to that work. And in this last year, we've trained 63 new people who are doing this work. We've reached out to 130 people inside who prior to the pandemic did not have relationship with us. So I'm coordinator for that group, and it's tremendous, and it's been incredibly inspiring to see how people inside are more connected and people outside.
Absolutely, and that is such an important message, which we hope the production of Fidelio brings, and especially this exhibit that we have accompanying the production. And so let's talk about that exhibit for a good while. So in conjunction with this production of Fidelio, we have presented an exhibit entitled We Shall Be Free, We Shall Find Peace, an exhibit of art by incarcerated persons at San Quentin State Prison. Now, Erin, do you recognize that line, we shall be free, we shall find peace? Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, that is the beautiful Prisoners Chorus in Act 1, where we are released from our cells for a few minutes, for a moment, and we're out in the fresh air. And we have this moment of freedom. And we have this moment of connecting with hope for freedom.
Yeah, and the German of that text is Wir werden frei, wir finden Ruhe. Again, we shall be free, we shall find peace. And it's one of the most just gorgeous moments of the opera, perhaps of all operas, I think. It's such a powerful moment. And so in order to put this exhibit together, we needed artists. And so luckily, I knew someone that was working with the William James Association and specifically with their Prison Arts Project. And that is Carol Newborg, who is a program manager, an exhibit organizer, and contract teacher with the Prison Arts Project at the William James Association. Carol, hello, welcome.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me here, but thanks for inviting our group to exhibit for the opera. This has just been stunning for us, and the visibility that so many invisible people have right now is just great. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you. It's been so wonderful partnering with you on this project, and there have been so many people at San Francisco Opera who have put their time and effort into making this happen, and so we're just grateful to all of you. So, Carol, we contacted you and said, let's put on an exhibit. What did you think to that?
Like, okay, let's hope we actually get back inside next week when we're supposed to.
Well, right, because when I first contacted you, you had actually not been able to be in the prison studio for a good while, correct?
Yeah, we had been out for a year and a half, and for a year we'd been in touch, at least through doing correspondence courses. I was the delivery person, and I'd pick up all the lessons from the teachers in the area and bring them to the prison mail, and we'd get the replies, and it was just very gratifying. Just even to know, even if people weren't replying, to know that they were getting the lessons, knew somebody was trying to reach them, and it was a real learning experience to go from the studio, especially for the musicians, to go from teaching live to trying to just do it all on paper. It was really challenging, and we were so grateful when we were finally allowed to go back in. And we were one of the first programs allowed back in. There was a garden project, several others, but it was something we really looked forward to. And then to be able to come in and say, hear their stories. I mean, there's so much people still are processing from what's happened and what's still happening. But to be able to say, well, there's this opera that they're doing in San Francisco, and they'd like your art at it in this giant, gorgeous lobby at Civic Center. And it was just like an unbelievably lucky piece of timing to have something so dynamic. And we were able to, some people had already done work around the freedom theme or injustice. Not surprisingly, incarcerated artists deal with that theme a lot, those themes. But, and also I was surprised that a certain amount of the guys knew Beethoven, some knew the opera, way more than I knew. It was just all a wonderful surprise and very invigorating for coming back and feeling like we'd have a venue for outside and people seeing what had been so hidden for so long.
Right. Now, of course, the themes of struggle and liberation are very central to the story of Fidelio and also to Beethoven's own life. And it had really been our hope that San Francisco Opera could be at San Quentin with these artists as they were creating these works and talking to them about Beethoven, talking to them about Fidelio. And of course, we have not yet been able to do that. We'll get there, but we haven't been able to thus far. And so I'm just wondering, in what ways were they able to relate to the story or to the opera, or were they? Do we still have that connection to make?
Well, first we had one of the artists, this Tommy Tongplin, who, when I started trying to explain the plot, and I was reading way too much information, and you know how opera plots are, and I was just getting lost, and the guys were getting lost, and I ended up just laughing. And Tommy said, "Oh, do you need a synopsis of that?" And he wrote one up in 20 minutes, and we all sat down again in the class and read through it. Everybody got involved then and could jump in and relate to various themes. So one or two people went with the woman's love and devotion for her husband and that as a theme, but that, coming out of the year after George Floyd protests and events, and there'd been a lot of art and letters, writing, everything addressing Black Lives Matter and injustice and lack of freedom. So art was partly in process and then was variant. People were totally inspired to create new work too.
Right. And of course, you've seen the production of Fidelio. You were there on Wednesday night with so many other members of the communities that serve incarcerated persons and communities and families. as well as at-risk youth. How did you like the opera?
I loved it. It was just, I mean, yeah, I was not literally jumping up and down, but I was really excited. And it was just the choruses and the messages. It was a stunning opera. And I know you had asked about live streaming it into the prison, which is technically really challenging. But if there's a recording that we eventually will be able to figure out how we could get that to play on the San Quentin TV that people can watch around the clock pretty much inside, I think it would be really popular. And as you said, the other thing that would be really great eventually, as soon as we can start having more visitors, is to have sessions with you guys coming in and talking about the opera and the meaning of it. And like the concerts you did, at least one in the past with the soloists, that would be so welcome now. It would really, really be great to do.
Absolutely. And Carol, please know that San Francisco Opera's commitment to San Quentin and to all the prisons in California and all these important communities, this is ongoing. This does not stop with this at the end of this production or the end of this exhibit. And so we really do look forward to getting into that studio with you and sharing with them Beethoven and Fidelio in whatever way we can. Aaron, I'd like to ask you a question. Wednesday night's performance, like I said, we had a number of people from the community as our guests, and you were very helpful in getting some of those people there. Did you feel any difference in the energy of the audience that night?
I may be projecting. I can't really know for sure. I felt a little nervous, and I actually have questions for Isaiah and Henry if either of you were at the show. I felt a little nervous because I think you have to treat this very carefully if you're bringing it to modern day. And these are real people. A lot of people are living this life of incarceration, unjust incarceration, and a very, very high percentage of people of color, people who are poor, are ending up in prison. And I was a little nervous because I'm not part of the artistic team. I just go on stage, I sing what they tell me to do, and stand where I was supposed to go. So with my colleagues who do this work, I was a little nervous how they would respond to it. So Isaiah and Henry, if either of you were there, I would love to hear, because you have lived experience of incarceration, how that was for you.
Absolutely.
Critique or commentary.
Yeah, let's take this moment to introduce the artist that we are so blessed to have with us today. And that is Isaiah Daniels and Henry Frank, both of whom were students of Carol's at San Quentin and had pieces in this exhibit. And Isaiah specifically was there on Wednesday night. So Isaiah, Henry, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Isaiah, do you want to share your thoughts on seeing the production on Wednesday night?
Yes, I do. First of all, let me say I was honored, I was humbled, I enjoyed it, and I want to thank you for the caption across the top, because I understood everything they said. For me, sitting there watching the show, I was mesmerized. The way the stage was set up, the way the performers performed, especially the singing. I mean, I love to sing myself, and I just sit there and listen to their voices. And then at the end of the show, I love the way they applauded. But I noticed that when the woman who played Fidelio, when she got up, the applaud roared, because it talked about her strength, and it talked about how she would go through all measures just to be with her husband, to save him, whether it's mentally or physically. But in this case, physically, she saved him. And what mesmerized me the most was I realized Beethoven knew that we would not get this right centuries down the line. And this play was based on that. And so I remember sitting there looking out the sliver of a window that I have in my cell at the women who came to visit every week in the freezing cold, the burning heat, the pouring rain, and how they were there to save their husbands, whether it was physically or mentally, just to keep them alive and hopefully to get them out. And it's just how it, and that's how it kind of touched me. For being a person who used to sit there and wait for someone and hope someone would come there and find me. And I can only imagine what he was going through just being there. Not saying I was a political prisoner or even innocent, but just saying just the need of that hope. You know, the love of somebody that loves you that much. You know, it was phenomenal.
That's so powerful. And Henry, I don't believe you've been able to see Fidelio yet, have you?
No, I was with my mom taking care of her. I was trying to get there, but Tuesday night, I was like, no, not going to make it. So I called Carol, let her know that I wouldn't be there. But I was pretty excited. I'd never been to the opera before, either has my wife. So we were disappointed not being there, but we did get a full report the next day and at the night too, and got pictures of the paintings and my painting up there, and just kind of the atmosphere and the feeling of the event, and the people that was corresponding with me, saying they were having a fantastic time. They were very impressed with how many people were there and how many people were actually stopping and looking at all the artwork. And I was like, man, that is so awesome. And if we had gone into the city today, we were going to swing by there and go in the lobby. But, fortunately, we didn't have to, so we're on Zoom. But still, we're going to make our way over there to go in and look at the artwork.
That's a really great point. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that the lobby is not actually open to the general public outside of performances.
Oh.
And even at performance time, you do have to have a ticket. Luckily, we do have a digital version of this exhibit online. But more importantly, Henry, we have 2 more performances left of Fidelio, one tomorrow night and one on Saturday. So let's you and I talk later, and we can make sure that we get you to see Fidelio if you're available.
Okay.
If not, San Francisco Opera has plenty more performances of many other wonderful moments of beauty coming up throughout the season. And you were talking about seeing, or the number of people that are actually interacting with the art and looking at it. And so I've brought up an image that shows just 2 photos of that exhibit wall. One in the main lobby when we first got it all put up, and then another one showing the actual audience having a look at it. And Carol, in the next few slides, we have actually the entire exhibit. And sadly, we don't have enough time to pause on each work and really talk about it. But I would just love to have you talk a little bit more about the program and the work that you do with the William James Association. And as you're doing that, I will kind of scroll through the exhibit. And if you want to pause on certain works and talk about them, please go ahead. And Aaron or anyone else, if you have questions or comments to add, you're most welcome.
Well, I never get tired of seeing this work, so this is great.
Yeah.
And I love that you have the online show, because then the families of the artists can look it up too. That's really important.
That was a very important piece for us, absolutely.
Yeah, and I understand that will remain up after the opera ends, so that's really important for everybody, the access. And with most of the pieces, there's also a statement, which was great. I love that you asked for a statement from each artist who wanted to contribute one, because people have a lot of pent up things to say after the lockdown and with what's going on. This is Henry's painting, and it's 3 feet wide, and it's just stunning in person. The subtlety of the prison scene there, and then the luminescence really of this hummingbird and the razor wire. I mean, it's so sad and so beautiful at the same time, and captures a lot, as Henry's art always does. I'm a Henry collector, so I've got several pieces. I love his work. He's got a great website, redtailart.com, so that you can see more of his work. And conveniently, the next slide is Isaiah's work. the way that this matched the set also was kind of stunning, just the feel, you referred to, or somebody did, the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of. I didn't even, it all feels so sad to me when I see that. I didn't even realize that. But so many artists inside. One thing that, as you see all the work, people have so much to express and to be able to get in touch with that's inside themselves, that they've never had the support for doing that, the idea that they've got skills and can develop them. It's amazing the transformation that you can see in people's self-expression, self-esteem, and what they share with others. This is done by an artist who's mostly Pomo, Jimmy Medell, but he was basing it on information, stories he was sharing with his cellmate who was from Hong Kong. And it's called The Dragon of Unity. And it's another piece of what happens, big piece of what happens through art, is cultural awareness and discovering more about yourself in that sense, and having that more grounded sense of roots and connection to others, your family history, your cultural history. But it's also what happens in the art room is people trade, share and respect each other's cultures, backgrounds, their skills, obviously, but the openness that people can share culture and identity through the art and through being in a studio space where community is built is one of the really powerful elements of arts, any art form in prison. We have music programs with theater, that we've had dance, everything, and writing, of course. And another fact, it's not just reaching your culture, but people reach out to their family through their art. This is a sad childhood memory. This incredibly gifted artist, actually, this is a small pencil piece, and he does huge murals also, very, very gifted artist. But he lost his whole family pretty early. And this is the sadness is there in the artwork of Dad and me. Yeah. But people connect to their families too. And this artist, speaking of working with incarcerated women, until 2013, women gave birth in prison in shackled to beds. So that's what this is about. But, and then the babies are taken away, and I'm not going to go there. But and another artist who's very active, he's one of our clerks also, who explores so much through his art. And I've seen him develop so much more, like coming to terms with what led him to prison as he's developed his painting. But this, of course, grew out of what was happening during COVID and the recent and endless protests from decades ago too.
And this one I just love so much. There's so much detail in it. And if you all look at the lower right-hand corner, this is clearly made for this production. Welcome to Fidelio 2021. That really is just so touching. And it's been great to see the audience be moved by that as well.
He's done a big series of protest posters. And there's also more of Orlando Smith's work in the Afrofuturism show at the Oakland Museum right now. This is the Thomas Tonglin, who I mentioned, wrote up a perfect synopsis of the opera for our project. He's doing an incredible watercolor project documenting the prison from inside. And his skill is just amazing. And I also love his sardonic title here, American Pastime. On the prison yard, yeah. But he's just, we're going to have to get his work out there somehow too, or he'll get it out soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. I should also note that we plan to make this exhibit publicly available at another venue sometime soon. And so please, everyone, stay tuned for that. We don't want it just to be about the ticket holders that get to see this in person. The work is just so stunning. Online, it looks great, but there's so much more to experience in person.
I had a question for Carol that you touched on just for a moment. I very much think opera, the art of opera, is for the people. And I know it is largely perceived as something for the wealthy. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the initial conversation, how people were responding to an opera. It sounds like some people already had some familiarity with it. Was there any conversation around sort of that opera is not for me, or?
That's a good question, because I had the same thought. And I didn't hear that conversation. Wouldn't be surprised if that conversation happened. But the fact is, it's kind of amazing the music that people are exposed to inside. And there's video channels that through the San Quentin TV that are playing things from art museums and different classical music, a wide variety is available. And so I think people were less, and it's a very San Quentin thing because of our access to so many supportive people and programs in the area. It's not the same at Chowchilla and, out in the desert and places, but there wasn't resentment, certainly, that I was aware of. It was like, this is an opportunity, and I mean, there's a certain humorous element to it to me. Okay, prison and opera, sure, and I think that side of it was kind of fun, actually. But because the opera had come and done a solo concert, soloist concert, and we've had other classical and quartets come and perform, it's kind of surprising how open-minded, or not even surprising that people are open-minded, but what people have been exposed to one way or another, so that it's not as surprising as I would have felt. Yeah, that's a good question. And I'd love, when I go back, I go in tomorrow, on Wednesday rather, I'm going to ask that question specifically of some of the participating artists and get back to you, because I'm curious too, what wasn't shared around that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would really love to hear that answer. And Carol, you were commenting on the number of opportunities that do come to San Quentin, and you and I have talked about how a lot of the other prisons don't get those same opportunities and are underrepresented. And Erin, you and I have talked about how female prisons are even more so underrepresented. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Yes. So CCWP, California Coalition for Women Prisoners, started 25 years ago, and it was in response to, on an immediate level, to really the very, very poor medical care you get in prison. One gets in the women's prisons at that time at Chowchilla, and it grew into different kinds of advocacy. Chowchilla is 2 hours away. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's on the way to nowhere. And it's a very, very underserved population. I had initially, when I got involved with this group, I wanted to go and actually teach people to sing. I'm also a voice teacher, because if nothing else, whether you're incarcerated or not, we need to find our voice. And that in itself is such a profoundly healing experience. And so I walked into the offices, which were very close to the San Francisco Opera. And I said, I would like to do this. I would like to start this program. And they said, oh, well, that's very nice, but we really need people on our visiting team desperately. So I ended up becoming someone who does in-person visiting with direct relationships with people. And I am very glad that I'm doing that. It's, I imagine, somewhat different than teaching a class, but it's opened my eyes to a world that I wasn't familiar with. I'm lucky enough to not have to have been. I have one brother who's been incarcerated throughout his life due to mental illness, but it wasn't any lived experience. And let's see. I think that as a community of brothers and sisters in the outside world, what we are lacking is understanding people's experiences and how close in some way all of us are to being incarcerated, either wrong place, wrong time, millions of factors. Anyway, so I began to be involved with the women, and the women, it's the largest, the population of women's prison is growing faster, much faster than men's. And so these are mothers and daughters and sisters and wives, etc. But there's a real lack of interest, probably because geographically, but there is a somewhat romanticized, I'm going to go out on a limb, relationship, I think, with incarcerated men that does not necessarily have the same appeal as serving incarcerated women.
And it's been wonderful to see in many of these paintings how these artists are celebrating women. A few of those we've had a look at already, and Carol has had some lovely comments about that. Carol, I'd like to share this image of 1,000 cranes from the origami class at San Quentin. What can you tell us about the origami class, and specifically the tradition of 1,000 cranes?
Well, I don't know the tradition of 1,000 cranes, but I do know about this origami class. So I bet you know about it, though. But Jun Hamamoto has been teaching origami there for 6 years or more. And it's a really wonderful, popular class. And she started working with the Pacific Islander Asian musical and performance groups, and she works with the Buddhists there. She's very involved. She also works a real job up at Lawrence Livermore. But she's just dynamic, and it's been great. There are a lot more Asian American prisoners than you would realize because of our system, and California, and who's had the hardest time here financially, et cetera, and with access to things. But the origami class, and this is a shot of it from above, just builds real camaraderie, and not all the participants are Asian American either. There's a lot of people come in to learn it, and it's a very accessible, June works with simple things to start with. It's so wonderful and accessible, but so collaborative. And things like the 1,000 cranes, and this is one of many places that they've created cranes for memorials, for other, group efforts, that their cranes are added in with others in a large storefront in the city. It's tremendous access for a lot of people in a lot of ways. And then some people, we've got one take it so far, and they're so skilled. Someone's building this giant white swan that's going to be about 3 feet high by about 2-3 feet around, all out of our origami of probably thousands of pieces of paper too. It can be used so creatively. And people, as you see here, are working a bit using paintings as backgrounds, and, doing mixed media with the origami. But the collaborative effort, and the fact that this was shared online, and this group, and there's probably over 20 people participated in the cranes. And there were so many moving statements that you can find online about the meaning of this for people, right, and what the access to June's class, and it's just a beautiful thing, actually. I'm so moved by it. I love it.
And we were so moved to receive 1,000 cranes from your studio class. That was so amazing. My understanding of that tradition is that if you make a wish as you fold each crane, and you make the same wish and you make 1,000 cranes, that wish will be granted. So you can only imagine what wishes they were making with these cranes. And we hope that many of you will be able to see those cranes in person at the War Memorial Opera House during our remaining performances of Fidelio. We also have photos of them online. And then, of course, as I said before, we hope to get this out to a more accessible venue to the general public later on. I just want to give a shout out to our live audience right now, our live online audience, that you are welcome to use the chat window on YouTube to ask questions, make comments. We'll be sure to leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you may have, but please feel free to make those questions and comments throughout the talk as well. Carol, I hate to speed through our exhibit. As I said before, we can't possibly get through everything, but we're so glad the digital exhibit is available to people. By the way, that can be accessed by going to sfopera.com/Fidelio. You can also buy tickets to Fidelio on there and find out more about the production. But so I'm just going to move ahead here. We have a few works to feature here of Isaiah Daniels. And I want to note that his website is mwasiarts.com. And there's lovely things to view there. So Isaiah, I would love to hear from you what your experience was in terms of creating art while being incarcerated. And then also tell us a bit about the images that you've shared with us today.
Okay, so let me first say, thank you again for this whole presentation. But my experience in life is I learned something that I think changed my life and was one of the main factors of me getting released from prison. And that was that the way I interpret and respond to the world around me makes up the quality of my life. And that's something I never knew. I was taught as a little boy that boys don't have emotions. We don't show emotions. Can't talk about love and can't cry. What was acceptable was anger. We were taught to fight, hit them back. Don't let that happen to you. And that's what I grew up with until I finally went to prison. But by being able to go to a class that, like Carol was, instructing arts and corrections in San Quentin, I learned how to express myself through art. If I had a bad day out there on the yard and it came in, I can take a paintbrush and paint a cloudy, rainy day into a beautiful sunshine. And so being able to learn how to express myself through art gave me the insight that I needed to understand what happened, what went wrong, where did I fail myself, and by learning this, gaining this insight, it was the same thing that helped me to get released from prison. I was able to express myself in what I thought, how I feel, what my life is going to be like now. So arts and corrections was a big factor in my release from prison and in my life. This painting that's on the screen right now is called Faith. And one of the things I had to do was I had to trust in something outside of me. I had to learn how to believe it, because all my life I had my way of thinking, and it kept me alive. I was a runaway. It kept me alive. But I needed to change. And in order for me to change, I couldn't use my own thinking, because my own thinking was the thinking that kept me alive. So I had to trust in something greater than myself. And so this is where this picture came from, Faith.
Wonderful. Oh, and this
painting here is, I struggled with my mom. We were left, given away. And I every once in a while I go into Laney College and I teach. And this is one of the paintings that always came up was a question about how I feel about my mom. And I used to say, I don't know. But long story, this is what my heart feels like. My mom died a little bit over a year ago during the beginning of the COVID. And I've always said, I don't even know if I would even cry. But there's another picture that looks exactly like this here painting that was taken when my mother passed away. And the paintings are exactly the expressions are almost the same. So for me, this painting is what I actually really felt in my heart about my mother's leaving me or leaving this world that I never knew I felt. It's called pain. This one here is called Contemplation. You know, there came a time in my life where, and that's when I learned about the way I emotionally respond to the world, that it's going to determine the quality of my life. And that's when I finally found peace in my life. You know, I was able to contemplate on where I wanted to go next, what my life looked. And if you notice, most of my paintings are on the feminine aspect. You know, that strength in that woman again, like Aaron has spoke of. You know, but yet and still, I think there's a feminine and a masculine side in every man. And so for me, in order to touch myself, I always went that way.
Absolutely.
This one here is my confusion. As you see in the background, I love Van Gogh. Um, but I was trying to find a way out of prison, which displays that sewer in the background because of all the time that's going by. And as you can see, the distortion in time, the broken, the justice system on crutches, the broken system. And I learned that I was being held down by someone who looks like me. And in actuality, the only person that was holding me down, those are my hands. I was holding myself down and just never knew
Your imagery and symbolism is
it.
so powerful. Thank you so much, Isaiah.
Thank you.
And next, I'd like to move on to Henry Frank, whose website is redtailart.com. And Henry, welcome. Thank you for being here. And same questions to you. Could you please tell us about your experience with art and also tell us about the works that we're seeing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I am honored and humbled. And just the way when Carol first reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to put a piece in. And originally I was going to put in a woodpecker painting, which will probably be the next slide. And then that night I went to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning with the vision of easy come, easy go. And so that piece just, came to the forefront for this opera. And it's the first time really that I've painted anything about prison. Normally, my paintings are about spirituality, about, having my voice, finding my voice and putting it out there in the world. And, and hopefully the people that need to hear it will hear it. And so, art inside for me just it created a safe haven in that little studio, where it was okay to be vulnerable, where it was okay to not know everything, where it was okay to, be afraid of doing new things. And while I was there, I talked with other artists and I talked with the teacher and even some of the guards that came in, which I probably wouldn't do outside of that room. And so years later, I realized what was going on. It was, teaching me social skills and communication skills, problem solving skills, and not realizing that that place took down walls that I had up and it took down walls that other people had so we can just, converse as artists, as human beings in that room. And when I first went in there, it was, Black Gary, it was Mexican Felix, it was, all these labels for people. But by the end of it, it was, just Felix or the block printer or Gary, he was the collages, or the clown and, stuff like that, where it just really let us become raw in there, and that's what we needed because those skills came in handy when I got out because even though there is some cultural and ethnic differences out here, but we got to work together because we're all here together. And so it helped, take that down and just kind of see people for who they are, where they're at right now. Um, so the slide before this, you don't got to go back to it. It's called Finally Home. And that is the first piece that I block printed when I got home. I actually drew it 2 years prior in ink pen and I sent it to my friend Beth. And I kept the stencil that I use to put it on the page. And then in my mind, it's like, if I ever get out, or if I ever get a block print again, this is the piece I'm going to do. And when I got out, I had a friend and she had a studio. And she's like, hey, whenever you want to print, my studio is yours. I said, I actually have something to print. And about 2 weeks later, this is what I printed. And it became Finally Home. Um, and so from that, I adventured into a business license and all that, creating my own business of the Red Tail art. And I used to send my everybody who wrote me or sent me money or whatever it may be when I was in county jail, I'd always send them a thank you card, a custom made thank you card, and on the back it would say Henmark. And as you know, then as time went on, I put the little red tail on it, and then I was like, if I ever get out, my business is going to be Red Tail Art because there's already a Hallmark, so why would I want a Henmark? And I said it has to be mine, and then here we are, but 15 years later, once I first thought that, did it come into reality, and that's now been 8 years ago. So art has been profound in my life. The playground is I love nature, and inside I live my life through photos and the TV and stuff like that. But there was always like, oh, I wish they took the photo this way, or they should have done this. And so I became a photographer when I came out. And this was actually at Cooley Loco, and I was in the middle of a grove, and there was about 45 woodpeckers in this grove, and they were just playing. I'd never seen anything like it before. It was loud. And I just kept slowly stepping forward and just telling them, hey, I'm just here to take photos. I'm not messing with you guys. And you tell I was like in the middle. And these woodpecker would be flying past me, and I never knew that they, did like the eagle thing where they grab the talons and they kind of just drop together. And well, this one broke right in front of my face, went up, and then came back up there. And I mean, I get goosebumps just talking about because I can still see it. But that is where this piece came from. And then,
Love the Legos. I love Legos.
oh yes, so I love the Minions. They're hilarious. And so in number 3, they went to prison, and one of the little toy things made like a prison cell minion, a minion prison cell. So I said, oh, that's cool. I'll get it. And I put it together. I'm like, well, that's kind of weak. I said, I could build a better one than that. And so I did. And I said, well, he needs friends, he needs some cellmates. So I built 3 together. And I said, oh, I could probably do a whole prison. And so this was actually originally like a minion prison. If you saw the movie, I had it, I had the skinheads in there, and I had them in there and everything like that. And then once I entered it in the county fair and they gave me special mention and everything, I'm like, what am I going to do with this now? I didn't feel like I could just take it apart and just do something with it. So I was like, I think I can make this a real prison. And so I made custom made stickers, and I made tiers and gun towers. There was a transport bus. I made a visiting room, and I'm working on the chow hall now. But it was very therapeutic, the mine prison, because the every piece in there has a story that was part of my life, and there or something I experienced or something that I heard. And then the visiting room, like Isaiah was saying, I had a lot of visiting, and with my father, but I'd say 90% of that visiting room was always females in there, visiting their loved ones. Um, and so when I look at these pictures, even when I was putting it together, I can hear the sounds of the visiting room, and I can remember, the things that I enjoyed. There was the microwave with the hamburgers, and I used to love to get the breakfast sausage and put them all in there and eat all 10 of them. And then sitting down and just watching people, enjoy their families, and enjoying my family. My father would come and visit, and some others, but mainly my father. And then down in this lower corner here, you see the photographer here taking the picture of the couple. And I was always in the photos, even in there, until they took them away. But and so this is just a little piece of my life in there, and like I said, it was very therapeutic. Since I've been out, uh, I like to say I do work for the William James Association now, and I am the programs and communications assistant for them administratively. And I was very impressed with all of the teachers and site coordinators and my boss, Lori Brooks, on when the pandemic hit and they're like, oh, we can't go in anymore, how fast we changed gears to make sure that we're still bringing our teaching into them to let the participants know, hey, you're not forgotten. We still want to provide this service to you, and, to give them something to do and take maybe their mind off of what's going on in there, because I've been in there. So I know how it just kind of gets in that loop. And so, I mean, I'm just very proud to be a part of this team. And now I've been hired as a artist instructor, so I'll start teaching in CMF and giving back to it was given to me. For the people, since I've been out in the last 2 years, I have been honored and been asked to become a bear dancer for the people. And at first, I wasn't going to do it. I was just like, I'm not Indian enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm, too fat. I'm all these things. And I was scared. And so, but I went to Yosemite probably like 5 days before the dance was going to happen. And I happened to see three bears through that whole day, and I was like, it's a sign. And so I called him up and said, hey, yeah, I want to do this. I'm willing to go. And Hector picked me up Saturday morning, and I went up there, and just I was accepted. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And so that opened up, more doors for more opportunities, for the art and people doing the work and that want to do the work to go inside and help the people that are experiencing incarceration right now. And I'm all about that, and I'm going to support them as much as I can. And they offer, the same. So those are my pieces here. So
Thank you so much, Henry. And that's so wonderful that you have found ways to give back and to be a leader in your own right. And Isaiah, I know that you have done the same. Can you tell us about that? What are you up to these days?
Well, thank you again. So my way of giving back I try when I'm out here. I said I teach at Laney College, art and how to express yourself through art. Sometimes at Berkeley Community College. I I'm I also work as a substance abuse counselor. So a lot of times when guys are getting out, my phone number is still within the prison as a hotline. I let guys call who need help, who need assistance with maybe understanding what's going on out here, how to relate to just trying to live out here, especially in California. It's not easy. Everybody doesn't have a clear avenue to once they release. A lot of people are just going to these halfway houses, basically, and trying to make it from there. And that's predominantly what I had to do. But there's a lot of things that are helpful out here, a lot of things that hinder. And so I try to help with determining which ways to go. But I try to provide be open and available to a lot of guys getting out still. And that's pretty much all you can really do is just try to give them what they need.
That is so wonderful. I'd like to go back over to Aaron. Aaron, I would love to see if there are questions you feel we've left out, any topics you want to discuss, but also I want to make sure that you are able to let our audience know about Riding Warriors and the Women Prisoners projects that you work with. Could you let us know where they can find out more information on that? Oh, you're muted there.
Yes, you can go to womenprisoners.org and go to the programs tab. We have orientations for people who are interested in doing this advocacy work about every 2 to 3 months. We also have a monthly meeting if you just want to dip your toes in and see what California Coalition for Women Prisoners is about. There's lots of ways you can plug in, but that is womenprisoners.org.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And what have we left out, Aaron? Anything you want to bring up?
I am really grateful that this conversation is happening and that Isaiah and Henry are here and that Carol is doing this kind of work. I would encourage everyone who's listening to just maybe read a bit and think about how you can plug in and how you can connect to this cause and how that as a society, even on the outside, we are all being affected by incarceration, whether you know it or not. And it's a really profound experience to begin to just look.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Aaron. And Carol, thank you so much for your immense work with everything that you do. It is so important. And am I correct? You've been teaching art at San Quentin since 1983?
I've been involved with the state arts and corrections program since 1983, but and I did work at a women's prison down south and set up the studio there originally, and we had ceramics and everything in the mid 80s, yes. And then I worked organizing exhibits statewide and worked in different facilities. But I went to San Quentin about 2012, a little earlier, I think, but I've been there for not quite 10 years. And the program it had shrunk and expanded. Now it's shrinking a bit again. So, if people want to learn more about this, they can also go to, it's very simple, prisonartsproject.org is for William James Association. And then all the funding for the state programs for the arts and corrections, you can go to the California Arts Council website and find out more about arts and corrections. And there are programs in all the prisons, but not as many as we would like. But it's everything Erin said is so true. The families of people who are incarcerated, the communities of people who are incarcerated, it extends way beyond the people we're not seeing who are locked away right now. And it's affecting all of us. It's a really good point.
Absolutely. Carol, I'm wondering, this has been your life's work almost. Can you sum up exactly what is the importance of arts education in the prison system?
Well, it starts with the basic feeling and idea that art is a human right, that it's something, access to the arts is something for all of us. Art is for all of us. And many people in prison have not had opportunities for arts and other forms of education and have been, shunted aside from early on for many reasons with, poverty, learning differences, abuse, and, endless list. And art is one of the few things that a lot of people can access, find something in themselves that can start a process of opening up and self-examination and learning more and participating in the world in that way. And I think it's fundamental to all of us, and maybe even especially those who've not had access can be most benefited by it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carol. Isaiah, Henry, any final thoughts for us?
All right. I just like to say about the arts is, and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, it was just that it gave me a different identity than just being inmate J80928. I was an artist, and then let me see myself as an accomplished artist, so I can accomplish something at something that I didn't know I was, going to be good at, and so it helped me go into, education, helped me go into other self-help groups, and try something new because. It's been beneficial. And some of it, wasn't comfortable, but I need to get over that to get to where I am. And so it's just helped me to have self-worth and just self-identity and seeing myself more than what I believe I was.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Henry. And Isaiah, final
I think Henry worded that. He took everything I could have said and would have said, because art has, I finally found out who I am. I never knew the person that I am today. And I think I like this guy. I think he's really kind of cool. Because prior to this year, it was nothing but self-hate. It was nothing but calling myself out of my name, calling myself names, failure after failure. But once I became able to express myself again, I have to stay with it. Once I became able to express my emotions and not bottle them up, my whole life changed. And like I said, I contribute to a lot of it, like people like Carol, even you now, Erin, you get on the wagon with us. That my life has changed for people like this, for what you do. Thank both of you. It's saving lives.
Thank you, Isaiah. We're glad you found that love, and we think you're pretty cool too. Isaiah Daniels, Henry Frank, Carol Newborg, Aaron Neff, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for bringing across this important message. Ludwig van Beethoven's only opera, Fidelio, has 2 more performances at San Francisco Opera, during which this exhibit will be on display in the main lobby for viewing by all ticketed patrons. To purchase tickets, find out more about the production, and to view the digital version of our exhibit, please visit sfopera.com/Fidelio. This program, presented to you by the Commonwealth Club of California, has been in partnership with San Francisco Opera and the William James Association. I'd like to thank everyone involved in making today possible, as well as those whose efforts contributed to Matthew Ozawa's powerful new production of Fidelio, and of course the exhibit itself, We Shall Be Free, We Shall Find Peace. I'm Cole Thomason-Reedus with the Member-Led Arts Forum of the Commonwealth Club of California in the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Community at San Francisco Opera. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this important discussion. May your days be filled with freedom, peace, and beauty.